Hey folks, Simon here. If you're new to the channel, welcome, and if you're a returning viewer, thanks for coming back. Your views are really helpful of getting this channel to grow. I was going to talk about everyday healthy eating for older cyclists in this video, but I asked my social channels what they actually wanted me to talk about, and they sent in some great questions. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how to fuel early morning and late night hard training sessions, what to eat before a long zone 2 ride, what to eat after a hard race, especially if you're racing hard the next day, and how to lose body fat and weight without compromising performance. When it comes to nutrition, I try to keep a critical but open mind because it's not just about calories and macronutrients, it's about how you approach food and what sits well with you as a person. But there are some things that we all have to follow to make sure that we are energized and making sure that we are healthy. The nutrition and weight loss sphere at the moment is even more confusing, with lots of gurus talking utter nonsense.
There's never been any long-term study showing that calorie counting is an effective way to lose weight and maintain weight loss.
And cause what's called a glucose spike, so a blood sugar spike.
I feel it's pretty scary right now of how much of a following these people have and how much misinformation they're spilling out on big social platforms. Luckily, we have exceptionally well-read, evidence-based, real doctors of nutrition fighting back and giving great advice.
All that to say, if you want to be leaner and healthier, it's a good idea to eat lots of fruits and vegetables and include some whole grains. All those things are part of a healthy diet, despite what low-carb zealots may say to you.
Righty, let's answer your questions.
Saddle up. Lock and load.
At Racing, Simon asked, what should I eat immediately before a hard Zwift session in the evening? Okay, so let's just say you've eaten pretty well throughout the day, but you've maybe had a little bit of space between one meal and your training session. This recommendation is what I do before a race. So 60 minutes before a training session, I'd aim for about 1 gram of carbohydrate per kg of body weight. If you're 65 kg, you want 65 grams of carbohydrate an hour before you train. You definitely don't want a big meal before this session, so you want high energy foods which are low in volume. So something like a bagel with banana and a good dollop of jam. These are easy to digest and give you an instant available energy source. Don't worry about glucose spikes, you're just about to do a tough training session, so your body's going to use that available energy instantly. Let me chuck a quick note on about hydration to make sure that you are performing at your best and recovering. Look, dehydration gives you the same feelings as low carbohydrate availability. And definitely being dehydrated will stop you dead in your tracks. So at Velo, what I say to people is make sure you're drinking at least 500 mils of water per hour with 1,000 milligrams of sodium right up to 1,500 milligrams of sodium in your water. Keep in mind, some sweat more, some sweat less, depending on the conditions, heat, altitude. So have that in the back of your mind when you're training. At Joel Davis 4 and Mr. Adam Fisher both asked similar questions and slightly different questions, so let me split those apart. First question was, what's a great meal just before a longer zone 2 ride? I'm no Gordon Ramsay here in the kitchen, but let me help you answer that question.
That's the salmon.
That's the salmon.
Now, I'm assuming you're talking about a long aerobic weekend ride, so kind of want to choose a carbohydrate source that's slow digesting. So porridge is perfect with berries, nuts, seeds and yogurt about 75 minutes before you go out and train. Adam also asked what to eat after a race. You don't need to overthink this. Look, bear in mind what we're trying to do is eat for energy creation and also maximum recovery. So eat a whole food meal that's carbohydrate rich with 30 grams of protein with some kind of veggies or salad in it. Let's say you are training really hard again the next day, or you've got a race again the next day and you want to maximize your recovery. This, for my mind, is where recovery shakes really matter. A shake with 30 grams of whey protein in it and about 0.8 grams to 1.2 grams of carbohydrate per kg of body weight with water will help replenish glycogen stores really quickly and hydrate you. Have that straight after a hard training session or race, and then go for your normal meal with a decent amount of carbohydrate, 30 grams of protein, lots of salad and veg, and then you're hitting all the right energy and making sure you're eating plenty of rich, nutrient-dense food full of pre and probiotic fibers. Joel Davis 4 also asked about healthy snacks pre-turbo. Okay, well, because all of this silly noise about blood glucose spikes, I feel that cyclists are scared witless of carbohydrates. You just don't need to be. If you're eating carbohydrates before training, as I said earlier, the glucose from that meal will be readily used as energy in training. So you don't need to worry about high blood glucose levels. I'll say it again, it's going to be used as energy. My go-to before a tough training session, if I want to eat a snack, is a sourdough toast or bagel with a banana and a dollop of jam. Cereals are a really good way to get the carbohydrates in because they're low volume but they're high in energy and carbohydrate. For those worried about high energy foods that are lower in overall nutritional value, don't worry about it. I'm going to talk about gut health and how to think about that later on. At Theory 900 asked me, how can you lose fat and feel for cycling performance? Working with the people here at Velo, the one thing I think is great to get across is when you're trying to lose weight and make sure that you have plenty of performance in training, you want to drive a moderate calorie deficit on a day-to-day level. It's going to take longer to get where you want to get to, but it's going to make sure that you're eating enough food to have enough energy to train really effectively. Here's some tips and tricks that will help you get really lean and make sure that you're recovering well. Aim for about 1.6 to 1.8 grams of protein per kg of body weight on the target weight that you're aiming for, not current weight. Aim carbs around and post-training, not because they are fattening, but because you're running a calorie deficit and you have less food to eat. So it makes sense to eat your carbohydrates in and post-training to make sure you've got plenty of energy and that you are recovering well. At djones632 asked how to best fuel early morning high intensity turbo training sessions. Well, look, the evening before is the backbone of this training session. Don't complicate this. Eat a normal whole food meal the night before that's carbohydrate rich with at least 30 grams of protein and veggies and salad for health. With that solid backbone of a meal the night before, you can start fasted if you don't like eating first thing in the morning. This really shouldn't affect your training quality. And to ensure the intensity on the session, personally, I would have about 500 mils of water with about 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate, which I'm going to drink over that session. One thing on fasted training is that there's some coaches still out there that believe this is possible, that long distance fasted rides helps you lose body fat and is greater for fat loss. And they're wrong. It's been proven that it's not the case. Don't do it. Don't think about riding fasted to lose body fat. That's not what it does. At Sean is Batman, that's a great handle. Ask this question. With all the talk of 60, 80 to 100 plus grams of carbohydrate in training, what is the right number and what is appropriate to consume for master cyclists who are just training? GCN did a video on this with poor Hank eating 120 grams of carbohydrate per hour, and he just didn't do digestively well on it. But let's clear this up. You don't need to eat 120 grams of carbohydrate per hour in training. That's excessive and it should be reserved for big races, and you should, as I say, train for that to make sure that you can actually digest that over the hour. So my recommendation is for an hour, if you're doing a tough turbo training session, between 30 and 60 grams of carbohydrate. If you're going out on a long ride, about 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour is about right. And if you're going out on a long ride and it's going to be, let's say, a little bit feisty, you probably want around about 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrate an hour. You don't need to be chucking 120 grams in every hour on every ride. I think that's a bit excessive. Sean is Batman also asked me a really cool question. He said, looking at your Garmin calories, are they actually accurate? No. Look, let's face it, these things can help us be informed, but when you actually look at the science behind a lot of these things, they tend to be as much off as anywhere between 10% and 90%. I want you to think about this. If you come back from an hour's ride and your Garmin is telling you that you've burnt 1,000 calories, I'm going to say to you that it's lying and you need to be mindful of this. At McDonald Photography asked this question: what if you don't have access to a gym and you want to build muscle. What can we expect in terms of gains, with the majority of training coming from on the bike and home training sessions? That's really hard to be specific on that. So it depends on what you've got to play with at your home for your gym training sessions. Body weight, dumbbells, kettlebells, squat racks, whatever. But you want to be making sure that you are progressively adding impulse to your training to make sure that you're putting your muscles under load. That's the thought process behind getting stronger. You don't always have to lift heavy to get strong. You can work on range of motion or time under tension and make sure that you are doing enough repetition just to stress the muscle. How quickly you progress really depends on how many times you can hit the gym and how much you are progressing from your training sessions. My suggestion is write it all down and ask yourself questions. Am I getting stronger? And if I am, where do I go next? David Kennett 2372 asked, is it possible to fuel my training and racing without using ultra processed food sources to maintain a good gut biome? Yes, but I think there's not many great products out there right now that will help you with this, so you're gonna need to make your own. Things like homemade energy rice bars with raisins, nuts and seeds would be a good choice. But I want you to think about a few things when it comes to gut biome. Your gut biome can be improved upon and be very healthy from all the food that you eat throughout the day. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, and small meals or snacks. So as long as you're eating most of your main meals from whole foods, fresh fruit and veg, some kinds of probiotic food, so cheeses, yogurts, things of that nature, you're probably doing really well for your natural gut biota. For my mind, the fitness industry are so focused in on the acute effect of what eating one processed food is, they're not looking at the bigger picture, which is if you're eating mainly whole foods and really thinking about what to eat to support and improve your gut biome, does it matter on occasion if you're eating in training more processed foods? I'm not so worried about this because for the most part, most of us who are really thinking about our health and our gut biome are eating the foods that are going to support it. If you are worried about it and you are eating more processed foods when training and racing, after your training and racing, maybe focus in on foods that are really high in pre and probiotic foods. So including things like sucrate or kefir and probiotic yogurts will help you feel like you're taking charge and control of your gut biome, especially if you're eating a few more processed foods than you would normally do. At Phil_D asked, is there an optimal time to use carbohydrates, e.g. after a weight training session or a hard training session? I think I've kind of answered this question in other questions that have come on in this video, but here's the thing. I think long distance cyclists and athletes are still petrified of carbohydrates, and even more so now we've got this sort of craze of high insulin and sugar and things of that nature being banded around the internet. You don't need to be worried about carbohydrates, and carbohydrates are definitely going to help you perform better and recover faster. I'll say this again, as cyclists, we shouldn't be seeing ourselves as weight loss dieters. We should be looking at the foods that we eat to make sure that we perform the best that we can do, and the food that we eat to recover in the best way that we can do. So yeah, carbohydrates in training are important for training quality and post-training for training recovery. I'm going to wrap up the video with this. As master cyclists, we need to be mindful that we need carbohydrates in our diet to perform well, and also carbohydrates are muscle sparing. And you also need to be mindful that when you drop carbohydrates and calories low, it can actually drop your VO2. I cannot say this enough. You should not see your longer rides or training with lower calorie or lower carbohydrate consumption as a chance to drive greater fat loss. This is not how fat loss works. Fat loss happens over a week, over a month, over a year, not by one meal. And not because you ate a lot of carbohydrates in one meal. Right, look, let's wrap this video up here. I hope the information I've given you has answered your questions. and I hope this has been really helpful. If you think it has, do me a favour, hit like, and look, chuck a comment in the box below, because that helps with the algorithm, and I am trying to grow this channel. And look, if you think this video will help any of your cycling buddies, send it to them, because again, the more I can get this out, the more this channel grows, and the more I can help more master cyclists get the best out of their nutrition and their training. Right, look, I'm off to Mallorca next week. Cheers for watching.